Hi everyone. Since we're not having class in person on Tuesday, I'm going to go ahead and review a little bit of the content that we were going to do in class to kind of give you a heads up and the opportunity to watch this a few times if you still have questions. So I'm going to review some of the key designs that were in our chapter reading that you just completed your data catcher for. And the first one we're going to talk about is one of the most common designs, the ABAB withdrawal or the reversal design. This design is one of the most common designs used, and I love the example here because this is a great one for teachers. This ABAB withdrawal design is all about Bob and trying to get Bob in his seat more. So phase one, phase A, is baseline. So it's the first thing you're doing. In baseline, the teacher does nothing but count. So in this case, we're counting event recording, right? Every time an event happens, she's recording that. And it's known as frequency data, right? Because it's charting how many times this happens. So every time this event happens that Bob gets out of his seat, the teacher's recording that. And we're looking at how many times Bob gets out of his seat. So that's recorded over several days of data, and that's the baseline phase. And then the teacher says, okay, I've got enough baseline data that I'm going to start my intervention. And so this teacher starts a reinforcement program, a reward program probably for staying in seat. This is phase B, the intervention phase, and you'll notice this phase change line here that indicates baseline is over and something different is happening. So during the intervention, she takes steady data, and then in order to know, is the change happening because the weather changed or because this intervention is impacting Bob's behavior, the teacher goes back to baseline. And again, it's no longer including the incentive program, it's just taking data, just counting the number of times Bob's out of his seat. After several days of taking data there where she feels like I've got enough data, then she says, okay, back to the intervention, draws another phase change line, and back to the intervention. So the two A's mean exactly the same thing is happening in these two phases, just taking data, and the two B's mean that exactly the same thing is happening here. She is putting the same intervention plan in place. So what would happen over here if the teacher said, you know, this intervention was okay, but I want to try something different? Would it be B again? No, it would not. This would change to an A, B, A, C design if a second intervention was put into place. But this teacher said, this first intervention is great, I'm using it again, and so off she goes. And ABAB is used all the time for teachers, is a fantastic, simplistic design, and I highly recommend it. But sometimes in the class, we can't just take data on one student at a time, and that's when we might be looking at a multiple baseline design. So this is a great multiple baseline because we've got reading fluency across multiple students. So we're looking at Bill, Gloria, and Bob, and they're reading fluency in baseline. Teacher's just taking data, just counting words per minute. And then in the intervention phase, the teacher's doing something else to increase the student's reading fluency. And so the data here, if we're doing visual analysis, shows that the student with the intervention is reading at a much higher rate than in baseline. So doing something for these students was better. But when you look at Bob's reading fluency, that's not so impressive. Bob doesn't look like he's really increased anything. He's at about the same level as he was when he started. So it looks like something else is needed for Bob. If we look at this next graph where the teacher says, all right, Bob needed something else. Gloria was doing well. Bill was doing well, Bob not so much. So the teacher puts into place an alternating treatment design. And in this design, the teacher is looking at two different reading fluency programs. You'll note that she's not doing the reading fluency programs on the same day. You know, on one day, you'll see a dot where she's doing reading fluency intervention 1, and on the next day, she's doing reading fluency intervention 2. So she's rotating how she's doing those, and you'll notice that Bob is clearly doing much better on intervention 1 than on intervention 2. This design is a little trickier because it's harder to say for sure. This data is pretty clean that Bob is clearly benefiting from intervention 1, but it's a little hard to say what the chicken and the egg is here, and if really it's the culminating factor of both of these interventions together that's helping this intervention look so great. So the next thing the teacher would want to do is put a phase change line and then just do this intervention one and see if this data continues to climb or if it drops off, because Bob really needs both of these interventions together. I hope this helped you understand a little bit better several of the most common designs. We'll talk more about them, but this is definitely something you can think about as you're looking at your own behavior change project for class and as you start looking at teaching and what kind of projects you'll be doing in class. See you on Thursday.